I think Solana's main thing is this consumer chain because it can do a lot. Obviously, when it sold off last year, I bought it all the way through, and then I started going down the fire dancer rabbit hole, and I'm like, okay, this is a game changer because Jump Trading, who are building it, they have one constraint that they try and work to, which is speed of light. Because what they're trying to do is get that order in to the exchange and the prices out of the exchange as fast as possible ahead of all their competition. So there's that whole book, Flash Boys, about this, where it's all about the size and the quality of your fiber optic cable and how close you are to the exchange. And then it's how fast your compute is. So they fully understand this. And they've built it to be fast enough for high frequency trading. Okay. Now, for people to understand what 1 million TPS means, Twitter is like 24,000 TPS. It's like WhatsApp is like 40,000 TPS. It's like, this is a order of magnitude. It's 20x what Solana does, which is already the fastest chain. So the applications that's going to come out of this are game changing. On top of that, compressed NFTs. To be able to create 1 million NFTs for $100 basically tells me that's ticketing, that's all sorts of stuff, receipts, anything. So you've created new business models that people don't understand exist yet. What they've built now is something truly extraordinary. And the price is truly extraordinary because nobody believed this. You know, yeah, my idea is somewhere between 500 and 1,000. You know, it survived a crisis, it launches, the tech goes massively improving, the community's good, the only on Solana narrative is very good, Tolly is one of the best thought leaders in the entire space. I haven't held much Bitcoin for a while because, you know, I look at this in terms of network effects, and, you know, my view is that more things are being built on Ethereum. It's a richer, deeper network, more use cases, and over time, I think the value of the Ethereum network will be more valuable than the Bitcoin network, unless something changes. Now, ordinals and stuff like that, maybe, let's see. And so it's just from that thesis alone that I haven't held much Bitcoin. I've just thought it'll underperform. Now, it always outperforms in crypto spring. The least risk asset in that space always outperforms at first. Then what happens as spring turns into summer, you start getting outperformance of alts, and particularly the large alts first, and then the smaller alts later. So there's nothing unusual about what's going on. I also very interesting to see the chart of ETH Bitcoin, you know, kind of long-term weekly chart. It's been a very interesting, that to me is an incredibly interesting chart, because I actually draw the wedge coming up from 2017 low through the 2020 lows. I think it was around the time Larry was saying what he said, the markets were starting to figure out that the real problem was this excess supply issuance of bonds, and that inflation wasn't going up, but bond yields kept rising. And it was that moment that gold and crypto picked up very quickly, is that the more bond yields go up, the more they started going up. That correlation changed. And that correlation was driven by the fact, I think, that the market knew if bond yields are going to go up like this, the Fed or the government or somebody's going to intervene. And so, again, the market's job is to forecast the probability of stimulus or a flight to safety. And Bitcoin always does well out of it. So that's what I think started it off. And I think Larry saying the same thing around the same time that the banks turned around, you know, we had excess debt, which created excess number of banks, excess use of bank balance sheets. As that process slowly unwinds, again, we've seen this in Europe, they've lost thousands of banks through consolidation or bankruptcy. And over time, the US banking system is going to keep contracting. Now, you end up with giant banks that are being supported by the government. So they purposely made too big to fail banks. What does that mean? All the others can fail. We don't care. What's going on is interest rates are too high, and they have to issue ongoing bonds to cover the deficits, but they have to roll the bonds from last 4 years, from 3 years ago, 4 years ago, from 1% interest rate to 5% interest rates, or 5.5%. And the problem is, to do that, you have to issue yet more bonds to pay for that. So if you go back to 2008, so nobody had to pay interest on their debt. That was like a gift, right? 0 interest rates. Every government refunded at 0, but for some weird reason, they did it between 3 and 5 years. That 3 and 5 year debt cycle just keeps rolling over. It's exactly the Bitcoin halving cycle. It's exactly the economic cycle. It's exactly the US election cycle. They're all the same thing. It's this super cycle, this everything code. And we're into that point of the cycle now where the balance sheet should start rising to cover the debts from the previous cycle. So this is the idea that, okay, global M2 is now positive because Japan, China, there's other people involved in the M2 calculation, right? This is global M2. So what's happened is global M2 is rising, and it will continue to rise. We do have a lot of forward-looking work at GMI. That's what got us very bullish and adding to all of our crypto back at the end of last year. It's because liquidity had started to rise. We're like, okay, this is interesting. Look, I think we're in a structural cyclical bull market and a secular bull market in both technology and crypto that is going to be driven by liquidity. That will not stop until probably end of 2025 into 2026. Then we need to remember this whole rate cycle again. We go down the other side of that slope. We do all of that game again. But that's what, this perfect cycle has been playing out since 2008. I don't see any reason it's not going to play out again this time. Looking at previous cycles, how high above the previous high it goes.
Okay.
So if we look at, if you're looking at Solana now, or you can look at Ethereum in the previous cycle, I think of Solana very much like Ethereum in 2017. So then what's the all-time high of Solana? It's about
$270.
Yeah. So you say, okay, a reasonable target would be 3x the all-time high. I think altcoins have their own cycle. If you remember back to last time around, it was DeFi that came to life first. We're seeing that now.
Yes.
I think that, Solana, like the standout, like ETH last time around, that comes up and everyone goes, okay, this is interesting. ETH should do really well. And then there'll be a lag before the real altcoin cycle starts.